Howdy, my name is Sean Kelly, and I was born in Norwalk, Connecticut in February of 1965. And I've played music most of my life, and I wanted to put together a sort of a little three-dimensional audio book. So without further ado, I was born in Norwalk, Connecticut in the mid-60s, and I remember the incredible sounds that I would hear as a kid and things that I was interested in, just drawn to immediately. And music was one of those. Music was one for sure. And later, but at first it was the sounds of the katydids at night in the summer in Connecticut, and the sounds of the crickets, the katydids, and the cicadas, and the sound of the water hitting the seashells down at Bailey Beach, and the sound of the night sounds. And I remember spending a lot of time at my grandmother's house when I was really little. And I would, up behind my grandmother's house was a farm called the Getner's Farm. And it was filled with peacocks and sheep and chickens and quail. I think they had quail. And Mr. Getner was the farmer, and he just loved having us kids run up to the field and find peacock feathers and chicken feathers, and just, we were just so fascinated with all the animals and the birds and stuff. And I always kept that fascination, and then much later incorporated it into my music in any way possible. So my parents separated in the early 70s, and we moved to southern Vermont, to the Manchester, Vermont area. And then that just became an extension of a whole nother beautiful place. For the first time I'm seeing animals and hearing birds and seeing birds and sounds that I've never heard before. My mom was a single parent at this point, raising 5 boys on her own. I don't know how, I really don't have any idea how my mother pulled it off and got us all through, but God bless you, Mom. Incredible. But anyways, my brother Pat was diagnosed with osteogenic sarcoma, which is a form of bone cancer which resulted in him losing his leg. This pretty much sent my family into a tailspin, where my mother was forced to sell our house and move to northern Vermont, to a little town called Milton, Vermont, which was about a half an hour shy of the border of Canada. My brother Liam and I ended up in Milton, Vermont with my mom. I wasn't doing so good in school as it was, and now I was entering into my sophomore year of high school. 2 years before this time period, in 8th grade, at the Manchester Elementary School, Manchester, Vermont, I had a teacher who wanted to discuss my learning disabilities, I guess, and he thought the best way to handle it was to send me to a school in Brandon, Vermont, for mentally retarded children. Thank God I had a guitar with me, and at this point it was all I had. I had no friends, no relatives lived near us. Really was disconnected from the whole world. We lived on a road called Bear Trap Road, and I think it's still a dirt road. We lived in a duplex, in a very small duplex, and I would just strum that guitar for hours and hours and hours and hours and play and play and play, not even knowing if it was chords I was strumming. But that was what I would do with my time. And I would strum and strum and strum, and then little by little I would learn chords. I would pick up on other people playing music as well. So if I saw somebody on TV playing, I would see where their fingers were and go get my guitar and come over and try and play to this person. And it really worked. Everything was so beautiful in Vermont. One of the most beautiful states in the country. Now, in the time that I lived in Milton, Vermont, I used to go into Burlington, Vermont by way of my mother because I was too young to drive. And I would go down to the music store and I would see songbooks, and I knew already what the lines meant as far as where they put the fingers. Usually in all songbooks there's a version where it's for guitar as well, not just for piano and other instruments. But for the guitar, they do show where your fingers go, you know, above chord changes in songs. So I would go down to the music store with a pen and I would write all over my arm the chords to songs I wanted to learn when I got home. And because there's no way we could afford a songbook. And that was the best ever, was to feel that I've got all these songs on my arm that I have no idea how they're going to sound when I get home. And I would run home and immediately transcribe them off my arm onto paper and sit in my room and learn. And then I would go back into the Burlington when I had a chance and do the whole thing all over again. I had such a passion and drive, and to this day I still have it. I just try and keep up with it. I make a lot of videos and write a lot of songs, and a lot of this stuff I'm just channeling. It's not really coming from me. It's just something that I allow to come out. I couldn't have been a more awkward teenager. Place in high school. Checking. I think the mic went out again. Have a mic problem. Still, it's not bad. And I think
We're gonna
it
have
was checking. 1, 2.
Stop this for just a second.
You hearing that?
Yeah, I'm getting that buzz.
Yeah. Maybe it's time I introduce you.
Yeah, I know.
This is my sound engineer and recording tech who's doing this project with me.
That's right.
And why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. My name's Lance Fleming, and I'm an old friend of Sean's. We go way back, and I'm just helping him with this project. That's it.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
Now, how do you like working with me?
It's been a joy. It's been a real joy.
Yeah. All right. It looks like we've got the mics working. That was a nice little introduction from Lance Fleming. Anyways, where was I? So I'm gonna start talking about like open mics and stuff, and that's places I used to play. And it was there were some places in Burlington, Vermont, where I could play in front of people and kind of, you know, see what this was like. I didn't know if I was going to be scared or what. I'd never done this before. It was just the next step, I guess, and it actually went really well. It was fun. I got to play probably 3 tunes every Sunday night, and I look forward to it all week, just to play those 3 songs in front of somebody. And that would be a great place as well to meet other musicians. That's where I met Charles Hambleton. He was the original guitarist for the Samples. He departed the band very early on. I'm going to play a few pieces from some songs that I recorded a million years ago, back when I lived in Milton, Vermont. And here, this is a little bit of Little Silver Ring. And here's the version of it when I actually wrote this song. I had a little tape recorder out and I pressed record, and this is what came out. So I'll play a little bit of this. Oh, to be 17 again. This is audiobook 2. Big thanks to Lance. Thank you, Lance.
Thank you.
And take care, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
All right. This is part 3 of the audio book. We've got Lance back here today. Lance, how you doing?
I'm doing real good. Sean. My daughter ate a spider yesterday, of all things.
All right.
Yeah. Watch out for that.
We'll be sure to keep our ears peeled for that.
Yeah, please do.
So I'm going to start out today's recording, audio recording, with some stories about a place where we lived when I was in my first band. I would consider my first band, which was a band called The Last Straw. And this band was formed in Manchester, Vermont. And we rented a house together, a band, like a band house, all of us together. We got this band house up in Londonderry, Vermont, which was up over the mountains, up behind Manchester. And it was very remote, and it was just perfect for 5 people to try and learn how to hone in on their instruments and learn what sound and playing together is all about.
Oh, goodness. The Last Straw. The Last Straw was the first time that we really... It was a band made up of Sean, Andy, me, and Sean's brother Pat, and Rabbit Tom Robertson. And it was really the first time that any of us realized that we could actually be in a band and perform music and actually possibly make a living out of it. So it was very exciting. Most people that don't play music, they don't know that time when you actually begin to make it sound real. And that's so exciting for a musician when you start to sound real. And The Last Straw was the first version of actually, even though it was very, what's the word, amateurish maybe, but it was the first time we actually sounded real.
And in this band, we had my brother Pat, and he was lead vocals, myself on very random backing vocals and just mainly lead guitar. And we had Rob Summers on rhythm guitar, and he did some vocals as well. And we had Andy Sheldon on bass, and Andy Sheldon eventually ended up in the samples. Okay, so Andy was on bass and vocals, and then we had Tom Robertson on drums. In this band, we did like a lot of recording and stuff, and writing songs and playing songs together, and not really having a time that we had to go to bed or wake up. We painted houses all summer, and that paid for the rent, and we just focused on being a band. And a little advice for everyone: if you want to keep your band together, don't live together. It does not work.
Yes, we all lived together in a place which we called the Straw Patch, because the band was called The Last Straw. And we were young then. Sean was probably 17 or 18. I was 20. And one night I was going out, and I think I said, "I'm off to conquer the damsels."
Now, off to conquer the damsels.
Anyways, a lot of cool stuff came out of that time period, actually. And let me play a few tunes here. This is a song called "Could It Be Another Change" that I actually wrote and recorded in the basement of that house, that band house up in Londonderry, and this is just a little bit of the recording. This is the original.
another change.
And I would say I was about 17 or 18 when I wrote this tune and when this was recorded, and that's me singing it. It's ironic because this song just recently ended up in a movie as the title track in a movie called The Perks of Being a Wallflower. And it's actually a really cool movie. So it's a long circle from when I wrote that song in the basement of this band house to ending up in a movie. Pretty cool. I like full circles. Let's see. Real quick. Hey Lance, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely. Shoot away.
When I see this, there's like a red light that goes off by the microphone.
Sure.
Is that something I should be concerned with?
No, I don't think so. I don't.
Okay. I'm just wondering if that had something to do with why the mic cuts in and out sometimes.
I don't know. I'll take
Great.
a peek. I'll take a peek at some point.
Okay, so living up there that summer, it was pretty cool as well because I think it was the first time most of us had left home and had lived elsewhere other than our mother's house, our parents' houses. And so a lot of interesting dynamics were going on constantly within this band, and you know, I think a lot of that was I was able to apply a lot of what I learned in The Last Straw many years later in the samples in regard to camaraderie and you know, kind of going easy on each other, and I mean, that's the most difficult part of being in a band, is keeping it together. You have to remember that when you have 5 band members, say in my case, of things that can be going on within each other, and all of us were young as well, but later that was important with the samples to really keep the fire burning. And speaking of burning, Lance?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What is that?
What's
Over
that?
there in the corner?
Oh gosh, that's smoking, isn't it?
Okay, I think that should get put out.
I'm sorry. Let me go find some water.
Okay. Excellent. All right, so moving on. So The Last Straw played maybe a handful of shows. As far as the band goes, we probably didn't sound all that great, but we sure thought we did.
Would you happen to have a fire extinguisher around?
This was part 3 of the Sean Kelly audio processed, put together by Lance Fleming.
He's on his way to Stardust to get a steward. But is it...
All right, this is audiobook 14, and I'm going to start right out with talking about a band I was in at one point called The Triangle. Okay, so this band was, the members of this band, it was myself, it was my brother Pat, and my friend Rob Summers, and the 3 of us were in a band called The Triangle. And this was a very interesting band, and I'll tell you some of the reasons why. In that band, I played a keyboard. It was like a Casio keyboard that had a drum beat attached to it, that also had a bass line, and it also had fills, so you could hit a button and it would sound like a drum fill. And I built a baby grand piano out of wood, just the frame of a baby grand piano, and it was a very miniature replica. And then I would attach my Casio keyboard to it, so it looked like a baby grand piano. I would play in a synthetic leopard fur outfit, or something, leopard jacket rather, that I purchased at the Salvation Army in Burlington, Vermont, for I'm sure about $1. And then you had my brother Pat, who was the main lead singer, and he played just acoustic guitar and sang. And then you had Rob Summers on electric guitar and vocals as well. and I did a little bit of vocals, but not much.
The Triangle in a Nutshell, that was a band that Sean, the Triangle actually was after The Last Straw. And Sean and I and his brother Pat were in Burlington. It was just the three of us. And since we all played guitar, Sean actually had to play the Casio. And he played the bass, the drums, the snare, the hi-hat, and the keyboards, and wore a leopard skin jacket. And I played a guitar, and a cymbal, yes. And I played a guitar called The Moon, and Pat played a 1984 guitar. And I remember the Triangle playing upstairs at Nectar's when Fish was playing downstairs one night. Do you remember that, Sean? You remember Richard Finn was at that show, and so was Joyce Needner, and they were like ghosts dancing. And Nectar came up, the Nectar Roars, who own Nectar's, came up, and he's like, "Yeah, you guys sound good. You know, keep practicing. We'll get you downstairs some night." And that night we made $3, yeah. Yep. And then Fish went on to make $3 billion.
Here's a song that I wrote in the Triangle, and it's called "Dreams Come True." And this song is a 3-chord song that was written on that Casio keyboard, so it's got kind of that sound. And then we took it to a recording studio to manipulate the Casio sound. And this is the song, this is what it sounds like. So I'll just play a little bit of it here.
Trees are green, sky is blue. I have seen dreams come true. Dreams come true. I have seen.
I'll play a little bit more here. Here's a song that Rob's singing.
What do you think? What do you think? What do you think about me? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think about
And here's a song that Pat sings. Let's hear what this one sounds like.
Walking down the street, shaking their heads, and dancing to the beat of the organ grinder on the corner, with his monkey playing his music so he can make his money.
And all these songs we wrote, so they were all original songs. We never played any cover songs, and we probably played about 3 shows, and one show that we played, our last show as the Triangle, was at the upstairs at Nectar's in Burlington, Vermont. There was the downstairs Nectar's, and then there was the upstairs Nectar's, and that video is online somewhere. There's that floating around somewhere. A million years ago, a radio station in Manchester, Vermont, a really cool station, one of my favorites, called WEQX, had a contest for local musicians to submit songs and then vote to see who would win. And we submitted the song "Dreams Come True," and we had so many friends in Manchester that everyone called up, and we won. We won, yay, woohoo! I don't think we got anything for it, other than a milestone, which was great. We won a musical contest of some kind. Okay, so moving on. Most of our shows were in the Burlington, Vermont area when we were in the Triangle. We played only so many shows. I mean, this was a really strange band, but just a little bit before its time, or just in a different time. I'm really not sure. So we're going to wrap this up. This is around the time that I was doing the open mics in Burlington, Vermont. I repeatedly going back and forth every Sunday for like what seemed like a year. I started meeting people and down at the open mics playing, other people. And one of those people that would always show up was Charles Hamilton. And I met him at a place called The Chic that was right across the street from the Chicken Bone in Burlington, Vermont. And Charles and I became good friends real quick. He had the same kind of vibe that I had and the same kind of positive belief that we could start a band. So we wound up becoming friends, and that's exactly what we did. Was we found two other people. Their names were Steve Rinker on bass and Larry Stelmatt on drums. So it was a four-piece band with myself as lead singer, Charles as acoustic guitar and sang. He sang as well. Larry played drums, played great drums, and Steve sang a little bit as well. And Steve Rinker on bass. And we would do a mix between cover songs like the Talking Heads and stuff that was going on back then, like the Police. We played a couple Police tunes. That's where I started kind of honing in on my upper register with screaming out Sting tunes. And then we would cover songs, and we just had a lot of fun. We played at a place called Finbar's, which is now, I think, Manhattan Pizza in Burlington, Vermont. And Finbar's, you could go in and we would charge $1 at the door, and people would come in and we'd set up in the back and just rip it up all night. We finally got around to getting ourselves in a recording studio, and the one song we recorded was a song I wrote called So Sorry. I'll play a little bit of that right now. I'll put it on here. This is a song called So Sorry, and the band is Secret City.
Can you keep a secret?
Like a rose without petals, like one without two, like a day without sunshine. It's like me without you. Such a time to be moving. My blood turns to glue. No heart pumping feelings when I can't be with you. I'm so sorry I couldn't see. So sorry I couldn't see. I'm so sorry I couldn't see. I'm so sorry I couldn't see.
And we got to play some really cool shows. For me, that was a great experience. We finally got to take it up a notch. And we played the Battery Park in Burlington. There was a little park festival thing that was going on, and I mean, that was a huge deal for us. And we played a couple private parties, and pretty much like every Friday we would just be ripping it up at Finbar's. And Charles knew everybody, and it was fantastic because he would draw in a ton of his friends, and everyone would come down, and it was really a neat precursor for the samples, which I never would have expected would have happened after Secret City, because when that band, we actually all lived together as a band. We rented a house on Lake Champlain, and all four of us lived together, and that didn't work out so well. And then we ended up breaking up that spring, and that was the end of it. And then Charles called me up one day and asked me if I wanted to drive to Colorado to start a band. And I was like, holy shit, let's go. So early February of 1987, just a few days before my birthday, Charles Hamilton, who I met at the open mics in Burlington and as well was in a band with him called Secret City, had called me up out of the blue after I had just gotten a job at a company called Digital. And thank God Charles grabbed me and just gave me like a day's notice and said, pack all your stuff, and I have a brother in Colorado, in Boulder, Colorado, and he said we can sleep on his floor, and I want you to come out with me and we're going to start a band. Wow, I thought he was out of his mind, first of all. So I started packing. I didn't have a lot to pack, so where I was living at the time, I just left my car right there, and I left my job. I didn't even call up. I think I just left. Then it was a blizzard the night we left. It was snowing like just, early February on the East Coast. And we had made it through upstate New York, and we hit black ice, and we just did like 5 turns and spun down the highway, spun off the highway, and then we all ran out of our car and ran up this embankment of this hill through the snow, and all these other cars were coming down the road, and they were spinning, and they were going off the road, and I don't know how our car didn't get smashed from behind. Anyways, I thought this was an omen, and so I suggested that maybe this isn't a trip I should be on, or this isn't the time to go. And this weather, it was snowing, and I'm thinking, man, I've never been west of Saratoga, New York, so I have no idea what's beyond anything. I had never been anywhere. So we got ourselves together, and then waited till they cleared the highways, and we're in a Volkswagen Golf, a little tiny Volkswagen Golf. We just continued on down the highway, and we took some kind of a route that took us through, like down through New Jersey. Charles is from New Jersey, so we stocked up at his house and grabbed as much food and stuff as we could, and then off we went headed to Boulder. But we went through Nashville, I think. We went through some states certainly I'd never thought I'd ever see again. The kind of scary part of the car going off the road and all that, it kind of cleansed the palate of my life in a way. It sort of said this is a new starting point for me. It kind of was. And so I had a little birthday on the way out, so I must have just turned 21. We did this trip in 32 hours. That's all I remember. I would have never guessed in a million years that I would have taken that trip about 1 million more times after, in a tour bus. Circles around the Midwest and the country, all over, in the United States. And I'll never forget the first truck stop sign I saw. It was a gigantic sign up in the air, and it was, I think back then it was it was like a Flying J, what Flying J's are. That's when I really fell in love with the Midwest, because it was just Vermont and Connecticut. That was all I knew. That was it. So hitting these long states, these huge states, eventually we hit Kansas, and they go on and on and on forever, and I had no idea this existed. No idea. You know, my eyes were just like so wide open for everything. Every single thing was new. And we just had such a great energy of like, we're going to go to you know, I don't know what our real plans were, but we certainly wanted to start a band. And we did. We had no idea what it would do. You know, we wanted to see where it would go. And all I had known of Denver at that point was John Denver. So then what happened is our car broke down just as we hit Denver, and we realized that was because of the carburetors, his Volkswagen Golf, because now we're a mile above sea level, and the engine's not operating the way it used to. And then as we pulled into Colorado, it started up snowing again, and there was a huge snowstorm. So we're driving down on 36, and Charles going, "That's Boulder." And I looked at him, and I had no idea what was going on, to be honest with you. No idea. I had no idea who his brother was. I had no idea who his friends were. I had no idea who anybody was. And then suddenly I'm in this new place, and wow, how fantastic that was. What a magical and just a magically fantastic time period. Huge thanks to Charles Hambleton for that, for pulling me out.
We're coming up over and down 36, dropping ourselves off for a while. Let's start a band and see where it goes. So many new things to know.
Few features on the British accent. There are, of course, many more, and what I'm saying wouldn't apply to every speaker of a British accent. If you want to find out more about accents and how you can look out for things.
Soon after moving to Boulder, and after we settled in and kind of met some friends, and we got ourselves a little apartment, and myself, Charles Hambleton, and Andy Sheldon got a place together, and that's where we would rehearse. And our first drummer in the samples, his name was Bruce Wilson. He was a great drummer, really good guy. And at the time, we were just still, we still wanted to explore other fits, and other musicians to see how they fit. So it didn't last too long with Bruce. And then we got another ad answered down at the CU bulletin board looking for a drummer, and that's where we got Jeep. And so we just had Jeep, Andy, myself, and Charles. And then we played a show at 14th and Euclid. We used to always play parties over there, which was fantastic. That's where we met Al. And then Al joined our band. So it was pretty simple how we all came together. So I got a job working as a dishwasher at a place called Dot's Diner in Boulder. And during that time period, our band had been playing out for a year or so and doing really well in Boulder. And we were approached by these people named Merle and Joshua. And they were connected to a guy named Michael Stewart, who apparently was in the band Sweet. You know, the band that sings Ballroom Blitz. Ballroom Blitz.
Hot dog, talk, law. Try this sentence out. Do you talk froth, or are hot dogs against the law?
This guy wanted to manage us, this guy Michael Stewart. He had a partner named Ben Ewing, and they apparently lived in Franklin, Tennessee. We signed some kind of a deal with them. We signed a $50,000 recording contract, and we didn't even know what this stuff was at all. Anyways, we signed this deal with them, and apparently we were going to record a samples album with them, Bill, Tennessee, at a studio called the Bennett House. So this guy Michael Stewart suggested that I quit my job, give up my apartment, and drive with Charles to Nashville, Tennessee to record this album. And so I ended up doing just that, quit my job and lost my apartment. And then Charles and myself were to drive to Nashville in his VW bus. And then the other guys were gonna, Jeep and Al and Andy were gonna meet us down there. So Charles and I were gonna go suss it out. So we're driving across the country and we're calling this guy, Michael Stewart, and he's not answering phones. You know, and there's no cell phone, so we'd have to pull over to truck stops and call this guy. So things started getting strange when he was not answering the phone. And we just continued. So we got to New York City and realized that this was a scam. This whole thing was a complete scam. So here's my first introduction into the music business. And these guys got us driving across the country to a place that doesn't even exist. After that, it was I fell into a depression because I had lost my apartment and my job, all these things that I had established in Boulder, and gave it up because this guy conned us. And so I ended up living in a friend's hallway for like a month till I could find a place. And then I was like trying to find a new place to live. I had to find a new job. I was just in a real depression, a real funk. You know, and the drive there was, you know, we were so excited, and then we just came back with our heads hanging low, and it was a real drag after that because we had a lot of people in Boulder really were rooting for us. You know, really we had such great support, and they really wanted us to succeed. And then coming back with our heads hung low, it was very, very depressing. So we ended up having to get a lawyer and pay 10 or 15 grand to get these guys away from us. As much of a con and a scam as it sounds, there really was a contract, so we had to deal with it. So I learned very early on some of the deceptions that can come into this business, and that was just the beginning for me. Just the beginning. It's a miracle that I'm still around playing music. But it's all part of the business, and it's all part of what it takes to get this music to the people, to the fans, and to keep it real. That's about it. That's what it takes. This is a story about something that happened back in 1988 in Boulder. And during the summer, our first summer there, once we had started to get to know some of the other bands in town, we made up a band. It was sort of our summer band while, you know, Jeep and the other guys in the samples at the time would be off doing something else. So here's what happened. I was staying in the basement of 80 West's house. That was a band in town, 80 West. Really great band. And we had an offer to do a show at somebody's house. Somebody was throwing some party, so we were glad. We wanted to play, but more so, we were getting paid in food, and we were told there was going to be some hamburgers and potato chips, and we were just like, we were picturing just this amazing spread of food. So what happened next was we set up all of our gear out in the backyard, and the name of the band, I don't know if I mentioned it already, but it was the Dirty Doves. So we were called the Dirty Doves, and this was one of our first shows. And after we set up our stuff in his backyard, after we set up our guitars and drums and amps and plugged everything in his backyard, he came and he said something went wrong with the food, and I don't know, whoever was supposed to bring the food to the party, something went wrong and that person couldn't make it, and we were starving. So he said, well, here's what I'll do, is give you I don't know how this worked out, but he got us in his house and we went upstairs in his room, and he explained that he was going to give us this stuff that was a real mild drug of some kind. It's no big deal, and it's in a glass of wine, and we all took a couple big gulps out of this craft of wine, and then after that, he explained that it was 16 hits of ecstasy put inside this craft of wine and stirred up, and this guy appeared to be like a doctor. He was like a drug doctor of some kind, so we called him Dr. Death? No, what do we call him? Dead Clown. And for some reason we called him Dead Clown. He disappeared, so we proceeded to go down to our instruments and begin our first set. He convinced us that food would be here soon. And here we are on empty stomachs, and I never had done ecstasy before. I had no idea what this was. I had no clue. He made it sound like it was taking a little puff of a joint. So we started to play, and we got into a song or two, and then all of a sudden it felt like somebody had put a lid over the earth, like there was a lid, like in a jar. And all of a sudden, all of us were inside of a jar. And one by one, we all left the band and wandered off into different directions. I ended up at somebody's house down the street in their kitchen, just talking. The other guys we all went in 5 different directions and didn't really talk to each other. We just quietly set our instruments down. Some kind of a giant wave was hitting us, and that was the initial ecstasy deal. I had no idea what was going on, and it took about an hour or so before we all wandered back, and still after that we couldn't play. There was other people just banging on the instruments at the party, banging on the guitar and doing this and that, but the 5 of us couldn't do anything but enjoy the rest of the day. Now looking back, and I realized what we had done, this guy was crazy. I will never forget that day. Okay, today in my audiobook, I'm going to talk about one of the things that I'm most fascinated with, and that is birds. I've been fascinated with birds. I'm told from when my mom was alive that I was actually fascinated with birds as soon as I was born. My brother Pat also, he and I used to birdwatch, when we were little. And a lot of what you're doing when you're little is terrorizing birds. And I know this now, but I didn't know that then. And we'd be chasing baby ducks and all kinds of things, but we didn't want to hurt anything. We just wanted to catch them. We wanted to see what they were. We were just so fascinated. And that fascination never left me, and so I continued on in probably in 4th grade. I had a teacher, really fantastic teacher named Miss Connors, and she was the one who realized how interested in birds I was, and I was doing all of my bird studies behind the scenes. So by 4th and 5th grade, I had already digested every single bird book in the Manchester Elementary School. And what happened next was really cool. This teacher kind of took me under her wing, pun intended, and she let me go to a bigger library that was in the Manchester Village, called the Mark Skinner Library, and that library was loaded with bird books. I had no idea this existed, and I was allowed to go there after school and during certain hours, and I was just in my own world, learning about birds and sitting there, flipping through pages and looking at pictures and reading and absorbing everything I can. I had just always been fascinated with birds, the way they fly, the way they communicate. All of their behaviors are just so fascinating. I've been a bird freak my whole life. So there was a time when I think I was about 14 maybe, and I had realized that being into birds wasn't so cool. You know, it just wasn't cool to be into birds. So it was certainly something I would keep quiet. But I still am so fascinated by birds. What I started out raising was pigeons. And then I had flocks of pigeons, and we would raise pigeons and homing pigeons. Well, mainly I had tumbling pigeons. There are tumblers, and there's racers and rollers. And, there's so many different domestic breeds of pigeons, and they're just such a really beautiful bird as well. They mate for life, and they're very family-oriented. They care for their young in such a really delicate way, as most birds do. And then I eventually started raising chickens. I had all kinds of chickens: Barred Rocks, Rhode Island Reds, Araucanas. I still can't pronounce their name, but it was a chicken that could actually lay colored eggs. It was like the Easter egg laying chicken. Really cool. I love chickens as well. I had guinea hens. I had white Emdens, which are geese. I had bobwhite quail. I would hatch quail in incubators. And I just wanted a farm. This was at the age of, say, 15, maybe. I wanted a farm so bad, and I still do. And I joke that at some point I'm going to buy the farm. And I'm sure I will. I'll finally get that farm. We got this call coming in. I'm going to see who this is. It's somebody's got a question about my bird watching time period. Hello? Sounds like a woman. Hello?
Well, a very, very heavy birdtation tonight. We had a very Darrison bite. Let's go to Terrace and look for the head of the pit.
I have no idea what you just said, but if it's got anything to do with, say, the highest flying bird, which is a good question, that I believe is a Canadian goose. The fastest flying bird is the peregrine falcon, which is also in a tie with the Indian swift. The smallest bird is the bee hummingbird, which is about the size of a bumblebee. The coolest bird, I would say, is the owl. The all-knowing owl. That's my story about birds. When I started playing guitar, I actually started playing lead guitar before I even knew chords on the guitar. Because what I would do is just play the acoustic guitar at the time to any music that I could, wrap my ears around. But I wouldn't be strumming, I'd be picking. I'd pick on the guitar over and over and over. When I was about 17 or 18 years old, actually I would have had to have been 18, because that was the drinking age back then in Vermont, was 18. But I wasn't out drinking. I was going to a place called Club New England that was, I think, on Shelburne Road in South Burlington. And I would just go there by myself and get a seat and stare at the bands playing all night, and just stare at the lead guitarist and see where he was putting his fingers, and how he was getting sounds. So I can't remember the name of this band, but they were great. There was a cover band that was covering 80s tunes, but still for me, my eyes were just wide open, sitting there staring all night watching these people play and just taking it all in. And you could get into bars in Vermont when you were 18 back then, which was pretty deadly when you think about it. But I used to go out and I had no interest in drinking. I just wanted to watch bands play. That was pretty much all I wanted to do. I would just keep picking on that guitar, and then eventually I got myself an electric guitar, And when I plugged that guitar in and I got to plick these leads now, it just sounded so great. You know, it was like a loud noise coming out of this thing I plug in. This was amazing. You know, this was my first time ever plugging an electric guitar in. I got my first guitar from a man named Edgar Hill, and it was a Kalamazoo amp and a Fender guitar, and I did not know how to play any chords on that, and that was probably 1979, 70. I actually, unfortunately, traded that guitar and amp in for something else at this trading place in Rutland, Vermont, or near Rutland, back in 1979. Eventually I got myself back to the acoustic guitar and just kept, you know, plucking on the strings. And then I got my second electric guitar when I was in Milton, Vermont, about 3 years later or so. And it was a guitar I bought from an ad in the paper for about $100. And my mom helped me get it. And we went up and picked it up, and I came home, and it had a coily cord, like the old-fashioned coily cords, you know, that plug into the amp and then go into the guitar. And it had tremolo, it had vibrato, and you would be able to hit a switch, and it would give this really cool kind of vibrato sound, which meant that it would oscillate kind of back and forth. And it also had reverb, which I got to hear for the first time ever. Reverb is, you know, I pretty much don't do anything without reverb. And reverb is just this echoey sound that helps give sound depth. Then I would go into the living room in our little duplex and plug in my amp and just play to the radio as long as I could all day long. Then eventually, you know, I just started becoming a huge fan of electric guitarists. From Eric Clapton to Neil Young, Stephen Stills, Santana, Carlos. When I play guitar, when I play lead, I really don't know what I'm doing as far as where I'm about to put my next finger. I just play by ear. So as I'm playing along, my ear is telling me where to go. I'm just listening. So eventually I just started playing more lead guitar, and everything came together, and I knew how to play lead guitar. A lot of how I learned to play lead was watching lead guitarists play at Club New England in Burlington, Vermont, back in 1980. I've had a lot of people ask me how I learned to play piano. And I wouldn't quite consider myself a piano player, but I can definitely play. And I could probably play a lot better if I practiced a lot more. How I learned to play piano, I was 17 years old, living with my mom in Milton, Vermont, once again. And we had the whole set of the World Book encyclopedias, which back then would have been your computer. So what I did is I looked up in the dictionary under piano what a piano looked like as far as the keys on it, and I duplicated those keys on a piece of plywood that I cut in half. So it was about the size of a piano keys. And what I picked up on is that if you put your fingers on a piano, every other key, that's a chord. Some of the basic chords, like a C, is just 3 white notes that are pressed down. Every other note is held down, and that becomes the C chord. So I picked up on this, and I took that piece of wood, and I would take it all over with me in the woods and around the house and down in the basement, and I would just play on it. You know, place my fingers every other key on that piece of wood and just practice over and over and over and over and over and over. Practice is very important with anything. Practice. It doesn't always make perfect, but it makes better. That's for sure. So I practiced and practiced, and it was getting to a point where I was going to Living and Learning Center at UVM, and I had access to the piano rooms. So what I would do is drive from Milton up to UVM. I knew the passcode, and I'd get into the piano rooms, and I'd sit there for hours and hours and hours. Well, it seemed like hours and hours, but you know, it really wasn't, because they kept those piano rooms so hot that you couldn't stand it for more than a half an hour. So I would just play now. Now I took my fingers from playing on that piece of wood where you hear no sound of any kind, and then taking it to a piano and hearing these notes come to life, and suddenly it was like a whole nother world. You know, it was like I was learning guitar at the same time. I picked up on the piano pretty quick. It's still difficult at times to play because I'm not connected to it very visually, so I have to still look at the keys a lot. And with guitar, I don't really have to look at the guitar. So that's how I learned how to play piano. So I'm going to talk about the music business a little bit here, and pretty much what a grand illusion it is. It really is. What it is an inverted pyramid. So the pyramid starts with you, what looks like on top, and everything then goes downward, but no, it's completely the opposite. You take a pyramid and you flip it up. Put yourself on the top of a pyramid and then flip it over so that top's on the bottom. That's you. So the samples have sold collectively, I think, well over 1 million records. Does that translate back into millions of dollars? Very much so, absolutely. However, that doesn't mean it comes to me. It doesn't come anywhere near me. I'm going to have somebody here explain this a little bit better.
The first major term is how many albums you may potentially have to commit to the record company. If it's a major label record company, you will be looking at anywhere between 5 and 7 albums, I would say. And what does that mean? That you get to make 5 or 7 albums? No. It means that the record company has the option to require your exclusive recording services for as many as 7 albums. But the way it works is you record one, they may or may not release it. If they, in their business company, in their business judgment, decides that, yeah, this is a good thing and I want another record, they'll pay you another advance, and they'll get the second record and the third and fourth and potentially the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. But it's that company's option. So People often hear the word dropped. What does that mean? That means that record company had 7 options. And artist was thinking, I'm going to record seven records for this company. And after the first record, it didn't do so hot in terms of sales. And the record company did not pick up its option for a second album, and therefore they dropped you. You're gone. You're not on the label anymore. They still own the rights to that first album, but there are now going to be no further albums with that company. So you're dropped from the label. So that's the first major thing. How long is your commitment to the record company? What's your royalty rate, which we just talked about, which is, if you're a new artist, somewhere between 11 and 14% 11 to 14% of the retail price. So, say in a $12 CD, you would think you would be getting 12% of $12. No. Actually, it's $12 minus packaging costs and free goods deductions. And those are the 2 main ones. But basically, your royalty rate, you're not applying the 12%, your 12% royalty rate to $12. By the time the deductions and the this and the that are taken out, you're probably applying your 12% royalty rate to, to about $8 or $9. So that would be your royalty rate. And then there are creative controls in the recording agreement, but almost all of those belong to the record company. Who's your producer? What does the artwork look like? What songs are going to be recorded? What singles are going to be picked for radio? All those in the contract are going to say it's the record company's decision. Although, in my experience, on many of those things, a lot of record companies definitely listen to artists. They're not going to force you into a recording studio with a producer you don't want. They will choose for a single at radio something that you don't think represents you.
MCA Records, after we put out Outpost, immediately went to drop us, dump us, and discard us. But little did they know that we had a 2-firm deal. So they had to go back to the books, and bands don't get second chances. That's impossible. Then we were going to ask for our advance and make our next record. Well, they didn't want to do that, and so they bought us out, which basically was, we sued them. I think we sued them for like $70,000, and all that money went towards back pay, debt, and whatnot at the time. Most bands get advances when they make a record for a record company, but the Samples paid for all of their records. We actually, amongst ourselves at the time, paid for each individual album. But somehow in the negotiations our manager made with the record company at the time, he made it so we have to pay for the records, but the record company gets to own the masters and control them, which, does that sound right to you? Does that sound right to anybody out there? But apparently it sounded right to our manager, and certainly the record company. There was a time period in the Samples when we were touring. I was touring constantly, but trying to deal with legal disputes at the same time, which made it just absolutely near impossible to not lose your mind while touring. So a lot of drinking was going on, and that was pretty much used as a self-medication to the stress and pressure of legal disputes that were just draining me. And that's where a lot of people that I used to work with turned to me, because I started investigating things and asking questions. So, there was a certain time period where the Samples and retaining attorneys in the name of royalties probably 15 years in a row, like straight, touring and dealing with legal issues, and none of them panned out in my favor or our favor. I know what was going on, and I know we had management early on that sold us out. They sold out my songs, they sold out the publishing companies, and they all got their percentages up front, and they didn't think for 1 second about the future of my music. And after realizing, I finally just threw my hands up because I really want to get back to music and play music. I've gotten some good royalties over the years, definitely have gotten a few here and there. I get some from ASCAP periodically. My more recent manager has gotten it so that I can actually receive some royalties that I haven't seen in a while, which is just fantastic.
Take my hand and walk with me. I'll find every one of you. And tell me who you love.
I'm going to talk a little bit about what it was like to make the Rehearsing for Life CD. Let's see, this CD was made in 8 days. It was recorded, mixed, and mastered, and most of the words written to the songs in 8 days. We went out to Emeryville, California. It was myself, Jared Johnson, Billy Muchler, Carl Dietl, and Dan Blondin. And we drove all the way out from Vermont, straight without stopping, other than for hotels, and then ended up in Emeryville, California, which is like in Oakland, I think, or near Oakland. So how it was done is during the day, I wrote about, I can't remember how many songs are on it now, about 10 songs. And I had 10 songs done as far as the demos go, the basic parts to them. And then the guys in the band would go into the studio during the day, and I would stay back and write words for the songs that are coming up next. So that's how that was done. It's pretty amazing. Anyways, Rehearsing for Life was done in 8 days. And I really, to this day, I really feel like that's one of our best recordings. I love that album. There were some very strange circumstances surrounding this album, of course. I'll get into that later. I had a lot of the chords and basic melodies and some words done for most of these songs, as far as the choruses go, or the main topic of the song. And then I just filled in the blanks, which would usually come to me really late at night. Yeah, there's a song called Moves Me Like a River. It's a real rockin' song. And Too Many Nevers. That's a song I wrote about looking back at my life and thinking of a million things I've never done. And then there's there's a song called Too Young to Die. Too young to die. There's a song called Too Young to Die. And a song called My Guitar. Yeah, this overall is a really, really cool album. I really like this album. And these guys in the studio were just so great. Billy, Carl, Jared, Dan. My hat's off to you.
I wanna live where the horses still run free, gazing
I'm going to talk about an album the Samples made, but actually never got released. And it's an album called Sigma. And it's called Sigma because it was recorded in New York City at Sigma Studios. And I'll tell you some cool parts of this project and then some kind of strange parts. So we were living on our manager's floor in New York City back probably in 1989 or 90, I'm guessing. We had I don't know. And the next thing was we were starting our own label called Just Records. That was the Samples' own label. And this was going to be put out on our own, the Sigma album. So we had an engineer in the studio, and we had Walt Berry helping to produce, and we had Kim Turner helping to produce. Some of the cool things was having Branford Marsalis come in and play his saxophone on a song. And the experience of being in New York City for a month or so was really awesome. Going to the studio by subway and getting back, and just so much going on in the city. However, it was because of the process that it was recorded, sounded very compressed, and the songs were just really squashed, and the life was squashed out of them. And then there was a lot of course, drug drama during this album. It started to get into a bad vibe towards the end, and it was expensive. I thought it sounded like shit. It has never been released. I'll play a little bit of some clips here. But a lot of the songs from the Sigma album then ended up later on the No Room album. So Sigma was kind of like an expensive demo process. Being in New York City that whole time and being able to go down to Times Square and go to Manny's Music and Sam Ash and all the music stores and just get lost in staring at music gear and music equipment and stuff. That was just a great experience. But a lot of things got real ugly towards the end of that album. I remember just not knowing quite what was going on, but I definitely felt like quality of the music should not be heard by Samples fans. Now listening to it these days, it might be in now. It might be something to release. And then also in the making of this album, all of us flew out to the city, but also in the making of this album, all of us flew out to the city, but and also in the making of this album, all of us flew out to the city.
Sitting on the sun, all alone, saying to myself if I could be home, and I need some company, someone to give me eternity. When I be moving and grooving along, then I'm saying I got to be strong. Just to survive when I'm all alone. Say to myself if I had a phone.
All right, this portion I'm going to talk about a CD that the Samples made called it's called The Tan Mule. The Tan Mule is a very interesting album, and it has a very interesting history. First of all, the name The Tan Mule comes from a Manchester, Vermont resident back in the day, probably back in the 70s, sometime maybe up to into the 80s a little. I'm not sure because I left at that point, but there was a guy named Joey Frost who would drive a vehicle around that said the Tan Mule on the license plate. And Joey Frost also, Joey also ran the movie projectors in town. He ran the Manchester Cinema. He ran the projector up there. And he also ran the drive-in theater. Joey Frost and the Tan Mule. What a historical character from Manchester he is and was. I bumped into him years ago in Granville, New York at a Price Chopper. I think it was a Price Chopper. And I got to talk to him for a second and tell him about the album we made named after him and stuff. So it's pretty cool. He seemed to be very flattered. So anyways, moving on. We had just, at this point in time, left MCA Records. And now I was stuck on a publishing deal that was, I cannot describe to you in words how horrible it was, how bad it was, how it was not in the interest of myself or the samples. You know, this was a really, a very lame contract looking back. It was one of those scenarios where we were sold out. So there was a situation where we were not allowed, there was no way possible to get off of this publishing company unless we were dropped. So they did not want to drop us. So we had to make an album that was good enough so that the public will enjoy it, but bad enough so that our publishing company will drop us. So, you know, what a bizarre, what a strange set of circumstances that is to try and be creative. Oh my God. So anyways, we made the Tan Mule with Kenny James, Andy Sheldon, Alex Mattson. I think Rob Summers helped out on that. And we did it at Red Door Studios in Boulder, Colorado. And we spent about $800 maybe. And it was mixed and put together and then submitted to the company, our publishing company. And our publishing company did not like the CD and they let us go. But nonetheless, the Tan Mule came out pretty cool. You know, Andy Sheldon sang a song about Joey, and I wrote a couple country tunes, I think, and threw a bunch of different things. And then the next thing I knew, it was for sale with a big CD pocket thing or something, a big CD zipper thing. Yeah, another CD I don't own, but paid for the recording. That was cool. And got out of a publishing deal, a really bad one. When I was about 14 years old, I used to mow an old man's lawn named Louis Larry, and he lived right across the street from us on Elm Street. Actually, the actual elm tree from Elm Street lived or grew on his yard. So I used to mow his lawn for $2 a week, and he had a very, very old-fashioned push mower that required some oil, just an oil can, and then you just push it. It would sound like, you know, it was that old-fashioned sound of mowing a lawn. Well, we became friends after a while, and Louis used to actually come down to our house. He'd waddle down to our house and use our phone periodically. And then sometimes he would just stay and he'd tell stories at the kitchen table. And there was one time where he was telling these really great stories, and I happen to have a tape recorder going. I had a little tiny Craig tape recorder, cassette recorder, and I recorded some of what Louis was saying and talking about, and that's when he started singing about when Irish eyes are smiling. And then many years later, I put that on our Underwater People CD, I think so. I think that's the CD.
When Irish eyes are smiling, they seem to say to you, go to hell, you son of a bitch. Oh, Broadway.
But anyways, I wrote a song for Louis when I was about 15 years old, and I'll play a little bit of it here. And yeah, the song's just called Louis. When I was little, my family moved around like hot potatoes. We lived in so many little places and kept moving around just a lot. I remember that. Not so much out of state, but within the state. And this was the state of Vermont back in 1978 or 79. And during this time, we lived in one of the places we moved around to was a house on Elm Street in the Manchester Depot in Manchester, Vermont. And back in 1978, 79, we just had like kids coming in and out of our house just constantly, going this way and that way. We all had, there's 5 boys and we all had friends, so our friends were constantly coming over and hanging out. And at this time, my mother was working up in northern Vermont and working construction, and she would work construction all week and then come home for the weekends and try and be a mom. So during that time period, my oldest brother Rusty was the legal guardian, and it was pretty much a free-for-all at times at that house. So there were times where it just didn't seem like there was adults around. So we kind of grew up for a year or two, around 1979, without parents around us during the week. And this environment was very conducive to, staying up late and an early start on learning what partying was all about. That was happening around us for sure. And as well, it was just like a bunch of kids just being like kids. And at that time as well, the depot was so cool because around the corner from our house there was a bingo hall that was still in operation back then. And I was friends with the neighbors, and this girl Dee Dee was a friend of ours as well. One of the cool things was this bingo hall and hanging out with all these old people. Your bingo. And you could win a little bit of money, if you went down with a few bucks. I'm not quite sure how it worked, being about 14 years old or so, and not having any problem whatsoever in there playing bingo for money. It was every Wednesday, and it's very, very cool. So, to me, I never graduated in any class of 1979, but I looked at that neighborhood as sort of a class in itself, and to me that was always the class of 1979. I've been down there many times since, and it's quite different. The sounds, I don't hear the kids running around like we used to, and it seemed quite quiet. The class of 1979. The music was put together by all of us in the samples. The words and melody I put together. And here we go. Here's a little bit of a song called The Class of 1979. That's what that's about.
92 FLY 727. Good morning, Bob Mason, riding my own train this morning. You know what I'm talking about?
Living now without regrets. Every stone has to roll. Looking back at who I was in my heart and soul. The class of 1979 was written on a tree. All the dreams we had those days are still a part of me. Such a long, long time ago. Such a long time. Oh, such a long, long time ago. Such a long time. Oh, such a long, long time ago. Such a long time. Oh, such a long, long time.
I'm going to talk about a song here that I wrote called Close to the Fires. And I wrote this song in 1989, I think. And I wrote it when I worked at this point I had lived in Boulder, Colorado. And I worked at the mall at a place called On Track. And it was this interesting place where people would come in and sing vocals over like an Elvis Presley song or cover song of some, all songs from other people. And they come in and pay and do this. And what I did is utilized it as a 2-track recorder. So I would write songs at home when I was living in Boulder, and I would bring that cassette to work, and then I'd put it in the machine, and I'd go in the booth and I'd sing to try and work out lyrics and melodies and stuff. So I wrote this song, Close to the Fires, in the mall, actually, while no one even knew what was going on. And it was kind of ironic because we had recorded our first samples album and put that song on it. And then we had a huge record release, or CD release, at Rocky Mountain Records, I think that's what it was called, and it was in the mall. I'm hoping I'm getting this right, because it was a lot of fun, and this record company was great, but I don't know if they exist anymore. But it was in the mall, and I, as I'm walking to the record store, where we're gonna do our big release, 4 stores up is where I recorded at the On Track place where I'd worked. There's an interesting full circle right there. But this song comes from a very heartfelt place within myself, and a deep sadness for the Native American Indians. And from what I've gathered, there's just such a lack of history in our American schools. There's not really a hell of a lot that in any fair way describes what I've come to learn, what happened to the Native American Indians. And as soon as I started picking up on that, my heart just dropped in so many different ways, because here was this beautiful culture that was thriving peacefully amongst themselves in America. And then here we came, and then there they went. And then the story of their history has been getting erased and changed and manipulated ever since. And my mother was very much into Native American culture. I remember growing up and having pictures of Native American Indians all over the place in our house, and things that always got you thinking that my mom was into Native Americans, Native American history. And it really rubbed off on me. So I've pretty much dedicated the first 3 or 4 albums. There was always a song I deliberately wrote for the Native Americans, for recognizing the Native Americans and the lost cultures of the Native Americans. And those songs are Close to the Fires, Summertime, and let me think if there's another one. The Last Drag has a lot of subliminal messages in it that are in respect of the Native American Indians. I'd have to sit and think, but there's a lot of undercurrents and undertones and stuff that I try and throw in here to keep a little reminder of a beautiful culture that's been suffering ever since. And also gave some warnings to the white man. And a lot of those warnings are starting to unfold. The events that have been happening on our planet, and just enormous geological changes happening, weather, temperature, this is a song for the Native American Indians. I'll play a little bit of it here.
But if you threaten to extend your violence, this earth of yours will be reduced to a burned out cinder. Your choice is simple. Join us.
The blue skies are turning brown. Trees fall without a sound. Jets are crashing through the sky.
When I was about 19 years old, living in the Burlington, Vermont area, I was searching for places to play out, like after I'd done a lot of open mics, I was really curious about playing out in front of people during maybe daylight hours. So I, myself and my brother Pat and Rob Summers, we got together and we realized there was really nowhere that we could play. Like, we would be going from bar to bar, giving them demo tapes of our original songs, and not much response. So I came up with the idea of playing at convalescent centers and playing for old people at old folks' homes. So we contacted a place called Fern Hill in Winooski, Vermont, or it was just on the edge of Winooski and Burlington. And they were so happy to have us come play. It was an instant audience. And so we would go up and play our music for them. And afterwards, old folks would come up to us with their photo albums and things, and they'd start sharing stories. And what a cool experience. And that's an experience that could happen any day, because there's always old folks somewhere that could use some entertainment. So anyways, years and years and years later, when I'm now playing in the Samples, we were in Burlington and at a sound check at a place called, actually I can't remember the name of it, and during sound check, we were doing a sound check, and we were going around with the chords of G, C, and F, just around and around and around. And I just started making up the words to Did You Ever Look So Nice? And at that point I was kind of channeling the vibe from these old folks telling stories and stuff. And so that's where that song was born, was at a sound check in Burlington, Vermont, at a Samples show at a place I can't remember the name of. And and then it was Did You Ever Look So Nice? And later we realized it was the same exact chords to Tomorrow People by Ziggy Marley. But we didn't care, and we just let it go. Until Ziggy sues us, I think we're good. Those same three chords are used in every song imaginable. But the song Did You Ever Look So Nice was inspired by an old folks' home and their appreciation of our music, and them showing us and sharing their lives, their life stories after our show with them. So basically I wrote the words and melody lines to Did You Ever Look So Nice, but the band, all of us together, came up with the three chords, or the way we kind of jammed them out. And then not many years later, we signed to Arista Records, and they had heard that song, and they wanted to put a chorus into it and this extravagant thing in the middle. And I'm open to that kind of stuff. I'm always open to that. But if it doesn't sound good, I'm also immediately going to cancel it. So we hired a producer, and they came to Denver, and we were in some studio in Denver, and we were working this tune out. 3-chord tune, Did You Ever Look So Nice, written about old folks, was now getting kind of torn to pieces in a studio. And after I heard it, after we all listened to it, it sounded so bad. It really sounded bad. I don't even know if I have a copy of it. I wish I did, because it was kind of funny. Looking back now, it would be funny, but back then it was really cheesy. And so Arista Records, we had been signed to Arista, and they said that if we don't keep the changes in the song, they would have to let us go. So let's just say the song never changed. And yes, we were let go, and we went our merry ways, and that became one of our most popular songs to this day. And I'm glad we never changed it. Here's a story about a song I wrote called Feel a Shaking. I keep getting some emails about maybe describing what some songs are about or where they were written or how they were written. And if I can remember that, I'm going to do that with some of these. And I'll start out with this one. When I was about 19 years old, I got myself a construction job, working construction for Pizzigalli Construction as a laborer for $6 something an hour, which was like $1 million back then. And I worked really hard to earn enough to buy this 12-string Alvarez acoustic guitar that I still have to this day. And I've used that on almost every Samples album. And I bought that at Vermont Music Shop. It was in the mall and on Church Street in Burlington, Vermont. Anyways, I set my sights on that acoustic guitar and I bought it. And I think the first 3 notes that I hit when I strummed it was a D, an E minor, and a G. And I strummed those 3 chords around and around and around, and it wouldn't get out of my head. And then one summer, I lived down in Manchester, Vermont with a friend of mine, and I started working on that song more and more and more. And it ironically used to be a song about Albert Einstein, and that's what it used to be called What You're Thinking instead of Feel a Shaking. And but it didn't stick, so that sort of fell to the wayside. And then the next following year, I was a friend of mine let me live down at this place with them in Cape Cod, East Falmouth, Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And I had that guitar with me, and as well I had all these incredible experiences of the ocean, and whale watches, and harbors, and islands, and just the beaches, and just something got into me. And by the end of that summer, I moved back up to Milton, Vermont, and I finished the song. I finished the words to that song, which ended up being the song Feel a Shaking. So I just filled in the blanks and took out the words about Albert Einstein and filled it in with that summer in dolphins and whales and sunglass, ocean glass, and the way that light shines off of the waves at a certain time in the day where it just looks like millions of diamonds just shining, and it's mesmerizing. It kind of puts you in a trance if you're not already in a trance, if you know what I mean. And so anyways, I got back and I wrote those words, I kept them, and I never had a chorus to it. So on my way to the studio, which was up at Northern Light Studio in Georgia, Vermont, I wrote the chorus on the dashboard of my car on the way up, because I had all the words except where it says Feel a Shaking. So that just came to me on the drive up. I threw it in, and to this day, it doesn't make any sense. Feel a shaking, feel a shaking. It kind of sounds like what I think of as like being out in the cold or something. But it is an ocean song that seems to mean a lot. It seems to mean a lot to a lot of people, and I appreciate that. That's pretty cool, especially when it's a song that had such a precarious origins. Here's a version of it that I actually recorded that summer back in 84 or 85 at Northern Light Studio. And here it is.
Gentle thoughts meander through the sand as the ship made currents reach land. The affliction sun paving through the sky. And when it's done, all the seabirds fly.
that's a little bit of history about a song I wrote when I was about 18 years old. It's a song called Feel a Shaking.
Feel a shaking. I just been waiting my.
It's really amazing what you're thinking about when you're 17 years old, 16 or 17 years old. And, you know, all these little songs are probably just basic thoughts that you have when you're 17. And I just happened to caught it at the right time to capture them, write them down, and put chords to them and a melody. Here's another song that I wrote in my mother's basement, and this song is called Lighthouse Rocket. And I have no real idea what I was writing this song about, but it ended up being the title of a solo record that I made a long time ago, and called Lighthouse Rocket. Here it is.
For me, traded in my lighthouse, things were getting rough. I can't afford this living, and I just can't find enough to do. Finally I decided that I could catch a wave. It may take time and trying, since there's nothing left to save. I'll go. I'll go.
Now, off to conquer the damsels.
Two other songs that I wrote when I was 17 years old, down in my mother's basement, was Little Silver Ring. And I just had a little tape recorder, and I was making up these chords, and just put some words to it. And it turned out to be Little Silver Ring. I wrote that. I had a little tape recorder that I had two actually, so it was a 2-track. I created a 2-track, and I would play through one side of it. I would record myself on the cassette, and then I would play that cassette back through its speakers and record myself singing along to it while it's being recorded on another cassette recorder. And that was the closest thing I could get to make a multi-track recorder back in 1983. And this version right here is the actual original version that I recorded on this, and this is Little Silver Ring right here. And as I'm going to play a little bit, but as you can tell, my voice is all over the map. I had no idea how to sing, but at least I was trying. That's the most important thing when it comes to music or anything, is just you have to at least try. As you can tell, my voice just, all over the place, but it's about soul. It's not about sounding like a mockingbird. And so my voice evolved, and then later this was one of the songs I brought to a sound check many years later in Boulder. And it became a fun tune to play, Little Silver Ring.
What a
soon after I dropped out of high school, I built myself a very small cabin in the woods outside by the house where my mother lived, my mother and my little brother. And I would go out there and add more wood to it every day and cut more wood down, and I was using all dead trees and built this really cool little log cabin. And I would go out there with my guitar and just strum away and practice, you know, totally away from people, and it felt really great. And it was one of those days that I was out there that I came up with the song Nature. I remember it being early spring, or like mid-spring, back in Vermont, and let's say it's probably 1984, maybe 83, 84. You know, I was just so inspired, and as well, the song is part of a call from a bird, the chickadee, and one of their calls goes like this. And that's basically nature. So to me, that's what it sounded like. So the song was inspired by the call of a chickadee. But my honest theory with what I was conveying in that song is purely that I think human beings have a real issue with focusing on our differences between us and nature instead of the similarities. And I think that's caused a lot of problems. Without seeing ourselves as part of nature, we're just in a complete state of denial as a living creature and as part of the family of all other living creatures on this planet. Human nature. What is human nature? We'll always be part of nature. And I think somehow not seeing ourselves as part of nature has been one of the biggest parts of the destruction of nature in itself. It does make you wonder, doesn't it? What is the real nature of the human being?
It's all around me. Nature, I hope it finds me. Lighting up a tree.
Today's song that I want to talk about is a song I wrote called Ocean of War. Or is it Oceans of War? I can't remember. Ocean of War? I think it's Ocean of War. Now, I wrote this song when I was about 17 years old. And I wrote it in the basement of my mother's house when we were all living together in Milton, Vermont. Wonderful Milton, Vermont. This song is highly influenced or inspired by my own family. My father was a prisoner of war in World War II in the Battle of the Bulge, which is, I'm still learning quite a bit about this, but it's very heartbreaking when I read through some of my father's diaries that I had my hands on at one point and could really feel for this, for just a little bit, what it was like to be, I think he was about 19 years old, and to be marching in the dead of winter or November, very, very cold in Germany. And he was emaciated from when I read some of the diaries that were left behind. So as well, his father, my grandfather, was in World War I and lost his leg. And I remember, as little kids going up to our grandfather and seeing all these incredible medals that he had, and he was really proud of them. He had all kinds of medals. And I believe I have another relative, I think it was his great-grandfather or his grandfather, was I think he was a general in the French Foreign Legion. So I've got a real interesting military line in me somewhere. And, there was a real sense of being proud of these medals and stuff, and I thought they were really great. I really wish I could see those again one day. I know all of them each medal was for something really special that my grandfather had done. And so having this influence around me growing up, I put it to music. So this song is called Ocean of War, and I'm going to try and see if I can play this version of it right here. This is a really, really old version of it. And this is actually the original version of it, and I'll play a little bit of it because it's kind of difficult to listen to because the quality's really bad, but it is what it is.
It's just ahead, but nothing was learned. Psychedelic waves in the ocean of war. Nothing was learned from that lesson before. We're a traveling mass with a memory lost, while the army men roll but still gathering. Nothing was learned. Every highway has turned to a winding avenue. A world of glass and I see through. Psychedelic waves in the ocean of war. Nothing was learned from that lesson before. We're a traveling mass with a memory lost, while the army men roll but still gathering. Nothing was learned.
Today's song story is about a song I wrote called Prehistoric Bird. I wrote this song in the back of a pickup truck while it was parked at the Newfane Banjo, Newfane, Vermont Banjo or Bluegrass Festival. And I got really tired and I was with a bunch of friends and I just cruised back and sat in the back of this pickup. And these chords have been playing around and around and around in my head, as they do. So it just came to me out of nowhere, looking up at a beautiful Vermont sky, listening to bluegrass in the background. I came up with the song Prehistoric Bird. And this song has never really been recorded for any samples album. There was a live version of it on Transmissions from the Sea of Tranquility, and I think that's it. But that tune definitely needs to be recorded. Kind of hear it as a rocker, a rocking song. But I was probably about 17 when I wrote this, and here are some earlier versions of it right here. This was in the... And then I went and recorded this song as well up at Northern Lights Studio. And I used to do a lot of recording up there. It was really great. It was just a really great atmosphere, and it was a long drive up from... Well, it wasn't a long drive actually. From Milton to Georgia, it was probably 15 minutes or something. Maybe a little longer. Let's see, what else can I say about Prehistoric Bird?
Prehistoric Bird, and that was written by Sean. Sean, you want to say anything about that?
This song is about, it's a real abstract view about, just about us three, and how a lot of people doubt us, and a lot about themselves. People doubt, and the highest isn't the ceiling.
Okay, The Last Straw on WRUV Live.
I'd like to record this song one day for sure, like with a band and with drums and bass, like a full rocking version of it, once I figure out a good way to put it together. Also, today's song that I'll talk about is a song called Black and White. I wrote this song as well when I was about 17, and it was recorded on Black and White, on our Samples Black and White CD, and it was a pretty cool version actually. But I wrote this when I was 16 or 17, and a little story behind it is there's a verse in this song that says, "The cat's on the table thinks he'll always be able to live in the colors that were given by the mothers," and so on and so forth. But right when I wrote the line, "The cat's on the table," is when this cat that I had found at the time, it was in a blizzard in Milton. I went outside and I heard this meowing from a tree by the road, and this was a serious blizzard. So I crawled out, cut myself to pieces climbing the base of a pine tree, and climbed up, and I remember my younger brother helped me and I handed it down to him, and we brought it in, and it was a little cat someone had thrown out of their car window or something. So that cat ended up mothering some kittens from our other cat, Leo, who we thought was fixed. So that's an interesting story. But that cat was on the table, on our mother's table, walking around my pen while I was writing it and like knocking it over, and you know how cats are, and it was pushing it around. So I just wrote, the cat's on the table, thinks he'll always be able to live in the colors that were given by the mothers and stolen by the one who returns holding none. And no idea where that all came from, but it's a little story about a cat being involved in writing of a song. And then the song Black and White is about my constant belief that there is just something in this country that's set up, designed to make it so that black and white people do not get along. And the song kind of touches base on some racial issues, and as well just kind of trippy stuff. I don't know, you know, what I was thinking actually. Black and white, always fighting, sadly. Back in 1993, right when the samples were kind of at the height of just cooking along, my mother passed away from malignant melanoma. Unfortunately, a stupid little mole took my mother's life. And when this happened, I was in the middle of a tour, and so I came back home, and all of our family, everyone was together in the hospital, and my mother kept telling me that there was a one-winged crow on her windowsill all day. She's like, "Sean, did you see the crow? Sean, did you see that crow?" And I sort of thought maybe it had to do with the morphine, you know, which, you know, it's who knows what was really going on, but she just kept saying, "Did you see the crow? Did you see the blackbird?" And then she'd repeat that it had one wing, and I'd sort of try and rationalize with her and say, "Well, Mom, how can a bird fly with just one wing?" And she wouldn't really answer that, and she was totally coherent, standing up, walking around, doing her checkbooks and stuff. Had no idea she was going to die the next morning. So, She died October 11th, I believe, or is it October 10th? October 10th, 1993. And I remember just feeling this kind of empty, insecure, panicky feeling all together at the same time. I don't even know how to describe it. It was kind of a nauseous feeling of we just lost a really, really great lady. And she put up a great fight. She was diagnosed, I think, 7 years prior to 1983, or 93. And so she was given, I think, 5 years and 5 or 6 years, and she had gone up and beyond that for sure. So when things settled down, I started thinking about how I felt about this whole deal, and she was cremated, and we put her ashes into Lake Champlain. Well, my father had passed away and was cremated as well, so I included him in a verse because both of them had been cremated. And it's just such a strange thing to think that the two people that came together to bring myself here, my family, and are just ashes. It just drifts and floats away. I remember it that day, and pouring her ashes into Lake Champlain. So I wrote this song called Water Under the Bridge, and it's kind of a song about the helpless feeling you have, the helplessness of just surrendering to the fact that this is all part of life, and this is all, loss and life and death is just all part of this circle. It doesn't take away anything by knowing that, but at least you know it, and you can kind of make peace with the helplessness of it. There's nothing you can do about it. And my mom was such a strong woman. She worked construction. She worked a lot of hard physical labor, and she was right up there with the guys, and she was a very attractive woman as well. So she was really showing the strength of a female, a woman, a mother, a girl, that in so many cases is looked down upon as the female being weaker. And after being raised by my mother, there's absolutely no way I can ever believe that. Ever. It's impossible. I've not met a man yet that was as strong as my mom, and I don't think I ever will.
Staring at the sun. All day long I heard the blackbirds sing. What's it take to make them cry? The sermon was empty and there's clouds in my eyes. Mom and Dad turned to ashes and just blew away. Slip away, little darling, your angels are long gone. They're in the flame of a candle that's lighting a new dawn. It's just water under the bridge. It's just water under the bridge.
This is going to be kind of a three-part song story. Sometimes I write songs in groups, and there was a weekend, it was over a Christmas break, probably back in 1994 or 95. In this one weekend, I wrote, let's see, When It's Raining, Still Water, When It's Raining, Taking Us Home, Nothing Lasts for Long, and maybe The Last Drag, all in one weekend. I was at my apartment all by myself, and everybody had gone into different directions and for the Christmas holidays, and I just stayed back and had my little 4-track recorder at the time. It was a cassette 4-track recorder. And then what would happen is I'd just start working on a tune, and then something would start to come to me in my mind. And they all just unfolded.
when years pass between us and the light shines on the water.
And then I put a capo on it, and I don't have a capo here. Oh yes, I do actually. So the capo, I put on it like the 4th or 5th fret and just started strumming another chord, which was an A, and I remember just kind of coming up with
maybe nothing lasts forever, not the mountains or the sea.
So that was a song called Nothing Lasts Forever or something. Sometimes I forget the names of these songs. And then I think I kept the capo there and just did an A minor, and that's where I came up with still water does run deep, your currents pull me through my sleep, go away but then come back, do they always? When we wonder what we are, somewhere distant on a star. And so I just kind of came up with that tune, and Taking Us Home. Did I already mention that one? And that song was inspired by a thought I had at the time of a church in Rowayton, Connecticut, that as little kids we used to call the Chicken Church. And I think it was because it kind of looked like a rooster. It was all stained glass that kind of went in a spiral. Really beautiful. Real beautiful church. So then I just started strumming C. As you can tell, my songs aren't that difficult.
When I saw the churches and the stained glass was gone, all the boxes were empty.
And over the years, this tune has been very hard to reach the high notes. So I've been taking the capos and taking them down a little bit, making it a little easier to sing. The Last Drag, I wrote that that same weekend in 3 days.
Can you look me straight in my eyes and tell me love is forgiven? Beneath it all, she cries that what's not safe is hidden. You know what's wrong now.
Yeah, I wrote The Last Drag that weekend as well. The Last Drag kind of came to me from, a lot of songs come to me from pictures that I have in my head, and all I need is a little photograph of something or a picture or memory of some place I've been, and it's very easy to write a song. The songs usually aren't going to be that complicated. I'm not a very complicated songwriter. No more than 3 to 4 chords, and I'm all good. 2 chords will do me just fine as well.
Still water does run deep, the currents pull me through my sleep, they go away but then come back, do they always? When we wonder what we are.
So I would just be sitting there in my room, working out some chords, and then I'd hit a note that sounds really nice. And then from there, the song just kind of comes out. Oh, I forgot to mention something about that weekend where I wrote 4 songs. This is a song story about a song called Won't Be Back Again. This is a song that is on the No Room, the Samples No Room album. And this song was written about an incident that happened in probably the early 90s when we were on the road. And we played in Oswego, New York. and it was a spring outdoor festival, and it was freezing out, but we still got up there and played. It was very, very cold, and all the people, there's lots of people, and what happened was we were starting to play, and no one told us, but I think it's some kind of tradition to whip mud and hay and dirt and rocks and shit at the band, and that's exactly what was happening. I think later we were told it was a tradition. I have no idea if that's true or not, but anyways, I have a tradition of when things are getting thrown at me, I retaliate. There was nothing else we could do. So we're having a great set and we're rocking out, and I remember it just being like, you know, it took a lot just to get on stage and play because our fingers were moving so slow because of the cold. Anyways, we started getting pelted with mud, and it became, you know, it was starting to get close to, you know, hitting instruments and hitting us. And I saw one kid who was way out in the middle, way out, and he was the one that was keeping it going, and I could see him out there, and he whipped something and it just barely hit me, and I took my bottle of water and I threw the best pitch imaginable, and I threw this so far out and hit him right in the head, and set my instruments down, and we all took off. And then the next thing that happened was all these college kids were chasing us, and we had to get rushed back to the first we made it back to the bus, and then they started bombing the whole stage and throwing all kinds of stuff everywhere. And then what happened is we got inside the bus and they started trying to knock it over and push it over. This is a 45-foot tour bus, and it's rocking back and forth. So we had a little bit of a war on our hands. A mutiny had broken out. And so the bus had to stay there, so we had somebody from the college grab us and throw us in a van and zip us off to the hotels because everyone wanted to kill us. Very strange, violent spring festival in Oswego, New York. I have nothing against Oswego, New York. Actually, I have some really good friends from there. But later down the line, we wrote the song. Al came up with the music to Won't Be Back Again, and I came up with the words, and it became a really fun song to play. And it was about Oswego, New York.
Search every ravine, every crevice. What the fiend must be found.